Good day, everyone. These slides are prepared to you by Group 4 to tackle about utilitarianism in respect to John Stuart Mill's book.
Right and wrong. One would think the test of right and wrong must be the means of ascertaining it, and not the consequence of having already ascertained it. Theory of a natural faculty. Our moral faculty supplies us only with the general principles of moral judgments. It is a branch of our reason, not of our sensitive faculty, and must be looked to for the abstract doctrines of morality, not for the perception of it in the concrete. The morality of an individual action is not a question of direct perception, but of the application of a law to an individual case. The principles of morals are evident a priori, requiring nothing to command assent. Right and wrong, as well as truth and falsehood, are questions of observation and experience. Questions of ultimate ends are not amenable to direct proof. Whatever can be proved to be good must be so by being shown to be a means to something admitted to be good without proof. The medical art is proved to be good by its conducing to health. But how is it possible to prove that health is good? There is a comprehensive formula, including all things which are in themselves good, and that whatever else is good is not so as an end, but as a mean. The formula may be accepted or rejected, but is not a subject of what is commonly understood by proof.
A being of higher faculties would not abandon what he possessed to sink into his perceived lower grade of existence in the exception of being extremely unhappy with his current state. Only few humans would ever desire to be a lower animal, for example. This can be attributed into four things: pride, love of liberty, of power, or of excitement. Superior beings need more to be happy, but doesn't mean they're less content. They bear the imperfections. They see these imperfections for every happiness they obtain and are not at all envious of those satisfied because they do not see these imperfections. They voluntarily indulge in temptation because of accessibility or enjoyment. They succumb to lower pleasures not due to their own preferences but because of the fact that they are no longer capable of enjoying the former. They lose their intellectual tastes as they have no more opportunity to indulge in it, and in these circumstances, the inferior pleasures seem to be more accessible and enjoyable for them. The greatest happiness principle is the greatest amount of happiness altogether, free from pain and rich in enjoyment, both in quality and quantity. This doctrine, however, was objected because of its unattainability and the question of a human's right to be happy. If happiness is a continuous excitement, it will last only for a moment or an hour or a day at most, and is thus impossible to obtain. But if happiness is the collection of various pleasures with pain in between, it is truly worthy to be called happiness by those who are able to obtain it. A life satisfied is composed of two constituents: tranquility and excitement. With tranquility, being content with every little pleasure; with excitement, being able to bear a considerable amount of pain. People who only care for themselves, however, do not realize and appreciate these two. This selfishness makes them dissatisfied with the life they live, along with the desire for mental cultivation. The curiosity for all the interesting sources of knowledge may yield them to be indifferent. But as long as this person with moderate amount of moral and intellectual capabilities can reach for his happiness, he would be an enviable existence. All grand sources of human suffering may be conquered by human care and effort. This process may take a very slow growth, one where several generations may need to act upon, but the end of the journey will present a prize far better than individual happiness. The sacrifice of own happiness for the sake of others is the highest virtue found in men. Utilitarian morality, however, requires that for this ideal to be perfected, one must place individual happiness in respect to the interest of the whole. Furthermore, education and opinion, weighing greatly in the formation of values, would establish a union between this individual happiness and the universal common good.
Objectors to utilitarianism cannot always be charged with representing it in a discreditable light. It is the business of ethics to tell us what are our duties, or by what test we may know them. But no system of ethics requires that the sole motive of all we do shall be a feeling of duty. Let's consider. He who saves a fellow creature from drowning does what is morally right, whether his motive be a duty or the hope of being paid for his trouble. He who betrays the friend that trusts him is guilty of a crime, even if his object to serve another friend to whom is he under greater obligations. The great majority of good actions are intended not for the benefit of the world, but for that of individuals. In every other case, private utility, the interest of happiness of some few persons is all he has to attend to. The amount of regards to the public interest implied in this recognition. There is no greater than demanded by every system of morals, for they all enjoined to abstain from whatever is manifestingly pernicious to the society. The doctrine of utility is founded on a grosser misconception of the purpose of a standard of morality and of the very meaning of the words right and wrong. There is nothing in the utilitarian theory inconsistent with the fact that there are other things which interest us in persons beside the rightness and wrongness of their actions. Utilitarians are quite aware that there are other desirable positions and qualities besides virtue. They are all aware that the right action does not necessarily indicate the virtuous character. When this is apparent in any particular case, it modifies their estimation, not certainly of the act, but of the agent. Utility is often summarily stigmatized as an immoral doctrine by giving it the name of expediency. But the expedient in this sense is a branch of the heartful. It violates a rule whose observance is expedient in a much bigger or higher degree. If the principle of utility is good for anything, it must be good for weighing these conflicting utilities against one another, and marking out the region within which one or the other preponderates, but in order that the exemptions may not extend itself beyond the need, and weaken reliance on the veracity. It ought to be recognized, and if possible, its limits defined. This is exactly as if anyone were to say that it is impossible to guide our conduct by Christianity, because there is no time to read through the Old and New Testaments. There has been ample time, namely the whole duration of human species, for learning by experiencing the tendencies of actions. If mankind were to consider utility to be the test of morality, they would take no measures for having their notions taught to the youngs. There is no difficulty in proving any ethical standard whatsoever to work ill, if we suppose universal idiocy to be conjoined with it. To consider the rule of morality as improvable is one thing. To pass over the intermediate generalization entirely. Men really ought to leave off talking a kind of nonsense on this subject, which they would neither talk nor listen to on the other matters. There is no ethical creed which does not temper the rigidity of its law by giving a certain latitude, under the moral responsibility of a great responsibility of the agent, for accommodation to peculiarities of circumstances. It is not the fault of any creed, but of the complicated nature of human affairs, that rules of conduct cannot be framed as it require no exemptions. If utility is the ultimate source of moral obligations, utility may be invoked to decide between them when their demands are incompatible. There is no case of moral obligation in which some secondary principle is not involved. We must remember that only in these cases of conflict between secondary principle, first principle should be appealed to.